Good afternoon, everyone. My name is David Jury, Associate Director of the Work Learn Institute at the University of Waterloo. I'll be your host for this event, the AI Generation Innovation Powered by Co-op Students. If you are unfamiliar with the Work Learn Institute and you're interested in today's topic, check us out on the web or on LinkedIn. We are a research, education, and consulting institute exploring work integrated learning and the future of work. As part of our research agenda, we're trying to understand how employers want students to show up to work, perhaps with exceptional AI skills, and what students and recent graduates want from their employers. Before we get to today's topic, I would like to start with our territorial acknowledgement. The University of Waterloo acknowledges that much of our work takes place on the traditional territory of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee peoples. Our main campus is situated on the Haldeman Tract, the land granted to the Six Nations that includes 6 miles on each side of the Grand River. Our active work toward reconciliation takes place across our campuses through research, learning, teaching, and community building, and is coordinated within the Office of Indigenous Relations. Recently, my colleagues and I at the Work Learn Institute surveyed over 2,000 students and 400 employers to understand how artificial intelligence is shaping expectations in the workplace. We found that students' preferences and employer practices are misaligned. That's probably not a mystery to anyone on the call today. And I'm going to mention 2 key gaps just to set the stage for today's conversation. First, there's a gap related to clear use of AI. While 2/3 of students want clear policies and transparency about how AI is to be used at work, only 1/3 of employers say they currently provide that sort of clarity. This might mean that employers need to clarify the rules and regulations for what appropriate AI use in the workplace looks like. Second, there's a gap related to AI as a strategic organizational priority. Only 1/3 of students seem to care whether employers use AI as part of their key strategy, but 2/3 of employers rank AI as a top strategic priority for their organization. So we have a situation where employers are saying AI is important, but they have little clarity around how it should be used, while students care less about that strategic impact of AI on the organization, instead prioritizing how AI will impact themselves as workers in the workplace. Now, this is preliminary research. We're still making sense of what students and employers are telling us, and we'll have more to share on that soon. If you're interested in that sort of thing, again, consider following Work Learn on LinkedIn and subscribe to CEE's bi-monthly newsletter called Insights for Impact, and there will be some more information about how to do so in the chat later today. More immediately, I'm pleased to welcome 3 Waterloo co-op students who will help us make sense of AI in the workplace. So let's say hello to Aditya, Aziz, and Sarah. If you have questions for these students, please use the question and answer function on Zoom. You can add your questions throughout the session. After we hear from the students, we'll meet a few employers, and then at the end of the hour, there's going to be a Q&A session where we'll have a chance to pose those questions to our panelists. So welcome students to our panel today. Pleasure to have you here. Aditya, let's start with you. Can you briefly summarize your recent co-op role and tell us a little bit about how you were using AI in the workplace?
For sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Aditya, and I'm a 4th-year computer engineering student in my final co-op. I'm working as a software engineer here at MyoVision on the Insights team, and my background is primarily as a full-stack engineer with a focus on backend and infrastructure. So the use of AI at MyoVision is quite extensive. We have a whole suite of AI products that we have integrated into our workflow. We use AMP from Sourcegraph as well as Deep Search also from Sourcegraph. And the way I use AI personally has evolved over my co-op terms. Our team has 4 major products, each with highly complicated microservices. So the way I use AI is primarily as a learning tool. I use it to try and get up to speed with what our architecture is, the tech stack, and it makes learning a whole lot faster. I also found that it makes it a lot easier to get another perspective and insight into best practices if you're prompting it correctly. and it also allows you to get quick feedback at each stage. Me personally, I've used AI, as I mentioned, to understand the architecture and make some component diagrams. We have it on our front-end platform to get code reviews. And overall, I use AI to optimize my development process.
Wonderful. Thanks for sharing, Aditya. We'll hear more from you in a moment. First, over to Aziz. Same question to you. Can you tell us a little bit more what you've done recently in your co-op work experience and how was AI involved?
Yeah, absolutely. So, hi everyone. My name is Aziz. I'm a fourth year computer engineering student, and my background is also mainly in full stack development. Earlier this year, I was a software developer intern at Loblaw Digital in their Gen AI team. I got to work on several apps where I used large language models like Gemini to basically streamline different workflows across the enterprise. One project that I worked on was helping the team that deals with vendor price increases investigate whether price hikes were legitimate. So often vendors will justify price increases by saying that the price of a particular ingredient in a product went up. And so the team at Loblaw needs to verify whether or not that's true. And the way they do this is by looking into the ingredient composition of the product in question and checking what the market prices are for those ingredients based on their weight. And then they can, come up with a reasonable market price for that product and compare it to the price hike. Unfortunately, they don't have the ingredient data for many of the products readily available, and backfilling that data would be very tedious. So I was tasked with building a data pipeline that could accurately predict the ingredients of those products. And I used a bunch of techniques to do this. So one was mapping a product whose ingredients we didn't know to a similar product whose ingredients we did know. And if that wasn't successful, we would try to research the product online using Gemini and make a reasonable prediction for what the ingredients of that product should be. I'm currently on my final co-op term at a fintech startup called Mantle, and right now I'm working on a product called Mantle Portal. It's used by limited partners to keep track of their investment data and derive insights from them using AI. I'm really excited to be here.
Thanks, Aziz. Looking forward to hearing more about your experience soon. But first, Sarah. Hi, Sarah. Can you briefly explain your role and how it related to AI?
And yeah, of course. So I am a computer science student in my 3B term, and I'm working towards an artificial intelligence specialization. So in the past year, I worked at the Impact Assessment Agency of Canada as an AI engineer for their newest Impact Lab team. This team was tasked with taking a look at different operations within the organization, kind of identifying bottlenecks and areas of inefficiency and kind of developing AI tools and seeing how we could use AI to create a more efficient workflow in that area. So during my co-op term, we worked to research existing tools, specifically using AI. So that's different like models, different whatever tools that were available and in the global environment. And we used those to kind of take a look at our current processes and how we can incorporate those into our tools. So, um, one of the inefficiencies that we had to look at was that a lot of workers were getting massive piles of information ranging in like the gigabytes. And we would kind of take all that information and compress it into a easier form for each individual worker to digest and be able to create decisions based off of all the information that they were getting in a more efficient manner.
Thanks, Sarah. There's certainly a theme there, right? About lots of information, whether it's at MyoVision, we're talking about traffic information, Aziz talking about price changes, um, just taking a lot of information and making sense of it. So I'm already connecting some of the work that you're doing across these three experiences. Okay, second set of questions for you. We really like to hear a little bit more about how your employer is laying out guidelines for appropriate ethical, responsible use of AI in the workplace. So, Aditya, first to you, how did your employer or perhaps your direct supervisor help you think critically about when is a good time to be using AI in your work?
Yeah, for sure. So my manager and my team as a whole has largely shaped how I think about AI and how I sort of understanding the best practices for using it. So just for some context, I'm currently in my second term back at Vision on the same team, but completely different product. And during my first, because they were relatively newer, and I found that using them more actually became a bit of a crutch for me. And this was kind of reflected in my work. So a lot of it, like the joy of development, the joy of understanding, was sort of being taken away because I was trying to offload more tasks and just finish tasks quickly. And after some feedback and discussing with my manager and my team, this completely changed my perspective on how I should use AI. And as I mentioned before, now I use AI as a learning tool. And I found that asking intelligent and directed prompts that have a single goal in mind yield the best results. And the only way that you're going to be able to ask such prompts is if you take the time to truly understand the architecture of the project and have a thorough understanding of the problem that you're trying to solve. So really being focused with exactly what you're trying to solve with AI is how I found a lot of success. And this has not only accelerated my understanding, but has also really made me improve as a developer.
I think it's a really powerful example, Aditya, because I'm getting that sense that some people are using AI to quote unquote turn their brain off, which is not what anybody wants. On the
For sure.
learning aspects, we don't want that. We don't want students just, not engaging critically in the content. The employers also don't want that from you. So it's really fascinating to hear that you struck some sort of balance at work to find out when is the appropriate time and how can I actually integrate this into my workflow rather than you use the word crutch, like rely on it
Yeah,
too
exactly.
heavily. Yeah.
The fundamentals are so important that you can't skip past them just because you have a tool that can help you with it.
Yeah. That's a great insight. Thanks. Aziz, what about you? I'm curious, what did your employer tell you about whether AI was to be used at work? It seems like it was an obvious solution to a massive problem at Loblaw, but can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So AI was core to the project that I was working on, but my employer always told me to think critically about making sure that the results were as accurate as possible and not just taking the AI's output at face value and kind of figuring out how to have the human in the loop throughout different points of the data pipeline. And so what I did was I realized the importance of knowing the sources the AI was using in making its prediction. So I made the AI collect all the websites that it was consulting for its prediction. And I made that information visible to the stakeholder so that if they ever disagreed with the predictions, they could go to the sources and actually check where the ingredients were being fetched from and if the data there was accurate. And then they could flag it to us if the AI made a false prediction. I also noticed that the AI would make hallucinations for various edge cases. And so I leveraged some prompting techniques to reduce those hallucinations. So one technique that I used was called chain of thought reasoning. It's when you ask the AI to solve a complex problem by breaking it down into smaller logical steps. And I found that when I did that, it was much more accurate. And another technique I used was called K-shot prompting. It's when you give the AI an example of the expected result that you want and how you want it to arrive at that result. And putting that in the prompt actually guides its output and makes it much more accurate. And another technique I used was giving the AI rewards. So for certain edge cases where the AI would often make mistakes, if you tell the AI that it would receive a bonus paycheck for handling it in a very specific way, then that was actually really effective in reducing mistakes. So yeah, I would say that my employer really empowered me to think about how to have the human in the loop, how to have like fallbacks for when the AI makes false predictions, and that really allowed me to succeed.
I don't know if you saw these, but there was a little laughy emoji that came up on screen there. I think people thought that last bit was fun. I've never heard of that ostensibly rewarding an artificial intelligence agent. That's kind of cool. Just so that everyone on the call knows, I hear human in the loop all the time. Can you really briefly, in 30 seconds or less, help us understand what you think that means to you? Human in the loop.
Yeah, absolutely. I think having the human in the loop really comes down to knowing why the prompt you're using is the way it is and how you can constantly improve on the prompt that you're using. So for the pipeline that I was building, because there were so many different edge cases, there would always be ones we wouldn't cover in the initial prompt. And it would just be something that you have to iterate on from experience. And so just being able to collect data of like how the AI is behaving for the prompt that you currently have, and then being able to iterate on it that way is, I think, how you'd have the human in the loop.
That's great. Last question, then I'm going to move on to Sarah. When you talk about these techniques that you applied in the workplace, for instance, K-shot, are these things you're learning at university? Are these things that you're taking from your academic studies and applying to work?
I actually didn't learn about any of this in my academic studies. I learned all of it entirely during the co-op term. And I had to take initiative to kind of just learn what techniques are out there. And then I applied them and I demonstrated their value, and that's how I was able to use them.
It's a really fascinating example of the meaningfulness of these, not just as jobs, right? Not just working with an employer for a paycheck, but they're actually learning experiences for you. And maybe we can do a better job of integrating some of that learning for you back in your coursework. So let's talk about that later. Okay, thanks so much. Sarah, over to you. Kind of same area of questioning. Did your employer offer any sort of guidance about when to use or not use AI at work?
Yeah, of course. My employer really emphasized how we can properly incorporate AI in an employment setting. And this was through two main points. The first one was obviously touching on Aziz's human-centered approach to the utilization of AI, um, especially given talks of job insecurities, given the new developments of these tools. It really is important that we keep the human at the center. From what I mean about that, it is really easy to overlook proper verification and rely too heavily on AI when using it to automate critical tasks. The approach centers around utilizing AI towards bottlenecking certain tasks that can be kind of sped up using AI, for example, like the data collection process. But it is really important that we remain conscious about like the AI's potential to make mistakes. And it is important that we assign the decision-making process to the human just so we have proper accountability and task checking in the workforce. So even as AI continues to develop and who knows where that will go, it's a completely like open-ended field. It's really crucial to understand that humans will always remain at the forefront for decision making. And while AI can be used to help the human come to that decision, it is ultimately the responsibility of the employee to enforce that final decision and take ownership of what they have collected. The second point that my employer touched on was really getting a good grasp of the issue before implementing a solution, before using AI to create that solution. So many times in the Impact Lab, when we would meet with clients, they usually always have a certain idea of how they want AI to be used and how it can be used in that context of the solution. But while they do understand a lot about their problem, it's also crucial that we, as experienced engineers, explore the problem into further depth and really work to find the root cause of inefficiencies. And once we have that, then we're able to prototype methods of solving the issue, either using AI or if we decide not to, not using AI. So that's really where the critical thinking comes in on should we use AI for this? Should we not? It's really important that we take a really good look at the problem, assess what the problem is, and how we can implement these new tools that we're finding out in the global environment towards creating the best solution for this problem.
That gives me a really good sense of what you mean by human at the center, which sounds a little bit like Aziz's concept of human in the loop. So that's really insightful. Thanks. Okay, I have one more question for each of our student panelists. We will then get to hear actually from someone who Sarah worked with in just a moment. So let's put on our sort of our recommendation hat because we imagine most of the folks on the call here are interested in working with students and recent graduates. Let's help them understand how to work with folks such as yourselves as you venture into the workplace. And the question is, really, what would you like them to know about your experience interacting with AI and what recommendations do you have for them? So, Aditya, over to you. What would you like employers to know about your experience working with AI? What recommendations do you have for them?
Sure. So I'd just like to reiterate that before we start using AI, I think it's very important to understand when it's ideal to use it. There are definitely a lot of use cases where we absolutely should be integrating AI, but there's also a lot of times that just because we have such a powerful tool, not necessarily we should be using it. So if you look at the more senior members of a team, the reason that they're so efficient is because they have a deep understanding of not only the technologies being used in the company, but also of what the product is, what's the problem they're trying to solve. And I think the greatest value that junior and entry level positions have can provide for an employer is by spending some time to understand the company, understand the values, and understand what are we trying to provide for our customers. And then using AI to accelerate this learning and to accelerate this process is great, but it should absolutely not be used as a replacement for this. Because I think even though you might be able to offload a lot of tasks and finish things quickly at the start, long term, this is going to have detrimental effects because unless you have well-trained junior engineers, you don't really have anybody who's progressing through the company to become a mid-level or senior engineer. So just drilling down on the understanding of the product, understanding the problem, and making sure that everyone is on the same page about when is the ideal time to integrate AI into our workflow or to our solution.
It's a great suggestion. Starting from shared values, clear expectations, I think is such a good recommendation for pretty much anything, but especially now when we're all trying to sort out when to use AI. So thanks for sharing that. Aziz, how about you? What takeaway message would you like to share with the audience today?
Yeah, so I'd like to share that I think Waterloo students are uniquely prepared to succeed in the AI era. And I would say the reason for that is because, one, we have a really strong builder culture. Most of the students, when we start off in our degrees, like even before first year, we were already working on personal projects where we're exploring new technologies. And throughout our degrees, that momentum only grows. And many of the students on this call right now, we actually started university when the AI era really began. And so we've been kind of growing up with it. We've had the opportunity to participate in many hackathons, and we're used to executing under uncertainty and adapting to changing technology like AI. We're treating AI as something to experiment with. We love using it to prototype and constantly ship ideas. Just the fact that you can prototype something now in an afternoon as opposed to over a week has really changed how we're able to execute and just describe our ideas. It's more like the bottleneck is not how fast you can code anymore. It's just how well you can describe your ideas. If you can describe something, you can prototype it. And I think our wealth of experiences has made us into students who are good at describing what we want to build, and we have exceptional ideas. And the co-op program is giving us repeated hands-on industry experience as well across many different companies, from early stage startups to large organizations. So just that breadth of experience from being able to ship real features, integrating AI systems, and getting to see their value in production environments. I think that's what makes Waterloo students really unique, uniquely prepared to succeed in the AI era.
Totally agree. I'm 100% biased, and I don't think the purpose of today's event was a sales pitch about the quality of co-op students, but think that message is abundantly clear after listening to the three of you today. So pretty hard to argue against. Thanks for sharing, Aziz. Sarah, you get the last word. What advice would you like to leave the audience with today regarding how you want to be treated and how you want to interact with AI as you venture into a career?
Yeah, I think AI as a whole is a great tool to debug efficiently and decrease the time needed to implement solutions. And as AI continues to advance, it will allow companies to ship solutions and products out at faster speeds. So since we're able to ship these products out at such quick pace, there is going to be a much higher emphasis on the quality of solution and the engineer's ability to accurately assess problems and develop a solution that satisfies the customer's needs. I think during my time at Waterloo and speaking with the many people that I've met in my academic time here, I think that Waterloo students have a really great mindset on many different problems that are currently being faced in the workplace. So, as Aziz and Aditya have it reiterated before, like a lot of Waterloo students, we've created different projects for our needs. So we've kind of diagnosed, oh, we have a problem. I want to find a way to do this more efficiently. So what we'll do is we'll take our own time to assess that situation and create a product that suits our needs. And I think translating that to an employment background, having practice solving and figuring out those problems is really something that I think every company needs. We bring a fresh set of eyes and mindsets towards many different problems in the workplace. And with our practice and with the numerous co-op placements, I think it's become a really good tool and has built our overall skill set to suit the ever developing kind of global set of tools that are available to us.
It's a great response. Thanks, Sarah. And a big thanks to all of the folks who joined our student panel. We'll see them at the end of the event for the question and answer portion. For now, we'll let them recover their breath, and I'm excited now to welcome Michelle to the stage. Michelle Schrimger is the director of the Impact Lab, so I actually worked with Sarah at the Impact Assessment Agency of Canada, where she leads digital and AI innovation to make government work smarter and more human-centered. No big deal. We brought in Michelle today because we learned that she's a real champion of ethical, transparent, and responsible use of AI at work. And this is something that students are looking for. So who knows? Maybe Michelle can tell us a little bit something about how to leverage co-op programs, work integrated learning, recent graduates, and AI for organizational impact. So Michelle, thanks for joining us today. Pleasure to have you. I'm hoping you can start just by telling us a little bit about the Impact Assessment Agency of Canada and how your team is integrating AI into your work.
Yeah, for sure. So first off, the Impact Assessment Agency is a federal organization that is responsible for delivering high quality impact assessments on major projects across the country. At the Impact Assessment Agency, I lead the Impact Lab, which is a small but mighty team that really focuses on helping the agency modernize how it works. We partner with clients and to rethink their processes and then build a digital solution that we can put on top of that. Although AI is front and center, the digital solution is not always AI, but it does have a component to it. Our team is powered currently by 4 amazing students, a project manager, a developer, and myself. So as you can see, we lean very heavily on the talent of the student pool. Our strategy really in the Impact Lab is to treat AI as a tool that people can use on their own terms. And it's really important for us that the employees feel like this is a bit like a pick your own adventure. So we offer practical, well-organized and well-defined tools so that employees can determine how and when they use these tools across the agency. A great example of that is really recently we've launched an agent that was built to help with comment summarization. And although the agent is built and can be used as is, we also allow employees to see the full prompt so that they can know what they're asking their agent to do if they wish to go down that road. And also with that prompt can create their own agent that reflects what their own needs are. So empowering employees to really use their curiosity and see how the tools that we're building centrally can work better for them. It's really important that the solutions that we build are transferable, and that we would be able to build from them, so them becoming more and more integrated with AI or more and more integrated with automation. So we start small and sometimes we go a bit bigger, and then as the tool progresses and as the students and our team meet with the client, you can see a real switch from the first conversation to the other conversations of what if we did this, what if we did that. So you really start having a really great participation from our clients on that.
I mean, we just heard from Sarah that clearly the Impact Lab has figured out how to get student talent and AI working together. So this is kind of where I'm hoping we can go, Michelle. Can you help us understand how does the Impact Lab, like really, how did you do it? How did you provide a workplace environment where students felt confident experimenting with AI tools, building their own agents, as you say?
To be honest, the Impact Lab wouldn't work without our students. The Impact Lab is entirely built on that talent and going to get them where they're at and in their progress. When we meet the students during our interviews, we find each student have something that can bring to the Impact Lab where we're at that point, and we bring them in, and we hope that we can allow them to have a great work experience. So the big part of what we're doing in the Impact Lab is that we allow students to experiment on a day-to-day basis. So we just ensure that the students have all the best tools that they need to play and to create. And then really ensuring that they have a great understanding of what the output we're trying to create. Students have this amazing ability to ask questions and without a preconceived idea of what the question would be. You can imagine being in the government that we have a lot of, this is how it's always been. But with students, that's not necessarily something that they lean into. And then I think one of the biggest things, and I hope Sarah's seen it and felt it through her experience with us, is that we really treat our students as subject matter experts. We ask them questions and we go in not thinking that we are teaching them something. We are really ensuring that they have the possibility of bringing their lived experience and their learnings in school or just out of school to the workplace so that we can take advantage of that. We also try to give them little challenges as to things that we think some of the students would be good at, but they haven't experienced or done yet. So we really try to lean into ensuring that the students have a great experience. The number one thing though, and I can't stress this enough, is that this is a talent pool that really allows me to deliver on my mandate. And I need to treat them and I ensure that I treat them as the subject matter experts that they are bringing to my organization.
It really sounds like you've got some secret sauce over there. The Work Learn Institute is always interested in understanding quality of supervision, the dynamic between students and employers who just seem to get it. So don't be surprised if I'm reaching out to learn a little bit more. And if we do see your email somewhere, don't be surprised if some of the audience members are emailing you to figure out, okay, how can I take some of these practices? How can I build an organizational culture that leverages some of this? Because I think there's some important stuff going on in the Impact Lab. I want to learn a little bit more about the role, specifically the role of the students in some of the AI tool development, because we heard earlier that you've got full-time staff and students who I think sound like about 40 or 50% of your staff complement. Can you help us understand the roles on each side of the house? Like, what is it that the full-time staff are responsible for doing, and how actually are the students supporting them?
I kind of see it the other way around at this point.
Okay.
My full-time staff really is there to support some of the work that the students are doing. One of my full-time staff is a lean expert, mapping processes and helping the student when they're going through a process with a manager to map it out and help them identify, where the pain points of that process is and where we could go in. And then from there, we do have obviously a senior app development expert that's really there to assist the students in determining what the best environment and what's the best infrastructure for the ideas that they're bringing forward. Obviously, being in a government organization, we do have, lots of security requirements. We have many assessments that need to be done. So really, although the full-time staff has a really huge role to play, we ensure that the thinking and the delivery is done at that level is really to make sure that the machinery around the creativity the students are coming in with is being done. A lot of the work that I do right now with the Impact Lab is ensuring that they have the time and the space to meet the clients. So sometimes they need me just in the room so that we open the door and they can have those conversations. I ensure that with them, I ensure to ask them what they need from me. So did you want to lead this conversation by yourself, or do you have questions you want me to ask the client? So it's really for them to determine what's the best way for them to get the information so that they can come up with the best product that we can with the resources that we have.
So you weren't kidding when you say the students are the subject matter experts. They really are, and the ecosystem is built intentionally to support that and leverage it.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
What is an actionable step that you think employers can take to basically copy you? How can they integrate AI without, overwhelming these students?
The thing I think is the most important is really to choose the best process for you to start with. The most successful use case that you think could work. What we've worked on and what we've launched recently is, I would feel like low-hanging fruits of what the agency needs to do. But really what it does is it creates a culture of people that are interested in looking at process redesign and digital transformation to solve problems. So really look at what you have to do and don't necessarily attack the biggest problem in the room, but maybe one that is a bit low risk, but carries a lot of drain within your organization. So individuals across the organization will feel it, will see that it's actually done, it's going to be better. And then building from those early wins is really important, keeping that motion going and ensuring that, we were talking about evolution of the products we're creating. So not always only like a minimum viable product can go out to people and they can start playing with it. And then you update and then you update and you update. So it just looks like there is a lot of work that is being done behind the scenes. But really finding your first case is the hardest, and then taking the time to mapping it all out to figure out how to be successful would be the next.
Okay, pretty clear advice. So with just about a minute left, Michelle, do you have any other advice that you would give to employers who may want to hire students for the implementation of AI solutions?
Well, besides go, what are you waiting for? This is really the best resource you can get to move your things forward. But all jokes aside, you also need to be intentional of why you're bringing in these students, and ensuring that yourself and your organization is ready to embrace this kind of change in how you're approaching problem solving. Also, the students are very creative and they come up with a lot of ideas. So it's really figuring out how to hone in that energy so that we best get what we want from them. Starting small again would be great. We had one student at one point. Now we have four, and probably during the summer, next summer we probably have 8 students coming in. Really figuring out that recipe that works for yourself and your management team, and then building from that, because students are a good resource, but we don't want to get them bored also with what you're doing as you're trying to figure out how to incorporate them within your work. So being intentional, I think, is going to be your most important step forward.
Not only is it great advice, but it's also actionable. Anyone on the call can start doing this tomorrow. So thanks, Michelle. Really appreciate your insight. We'll hear from Michelle in just a few minutes when our question and answer period begins. Remember, if you have any questions for our speakers, please put them in the Q&A section on Zoom. You should see the small icon on the menu bar of Zoom. Okay, we were hoping to have Justin from MyoVision join us. Unfortunately, he could not be here today. Justin Krilicki is the Global Talent Acquisition Manager at MyoVision. He spent much of his career building and scaling recruitment strategies that lead to superstar quality hires. Fortunately, I was able to catch up with Justin yesterday. We pre-recorded our conversation, so we're going to play that conversation for you now, and then we're going to have our Q&A panel at the end. Justin, thanks so much for joining me today. The audience really wants to hear a little bit more about MyoVision and your role at the company.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Dave. Yeah, so I joined MyoVision just over a year ago now. Always a local tech company that I really admired. Great leader in Curtis McBride, who's well known in the community, but technology that I think can have a lasting impact on the world to improve traffic flow efficiency, largely through intersections, and it's got that stickiness to it, a product that you feel like is going to be around for a long time. Multiple products now, so there's the attraction there, but also this bigger vision on where we can go grow globally. And so, yeah, excited to be here, and my role is to lead recruitment.
So that segues me in my first question. Being that you are a tech company and being that AI is the only thing that everyone wants to talk about these days, can you tell us a little bit more about how you are seeing AI show up in the recruitment process? And in particular, I think you might have a story to tell about where it's become a problem.
Yeah, I mean, it is popping up more and more frequently for sure, and kind of at every stage, right? So when you look at the applications coming through, I mean, there are people who, quite frankly, are creating cover letters, and they're not, they're including wording taken right from ChatGPT, saying ChatGPT is saying this, and so. And then insert this. They haven't even customized cover letters for that matter. But even through the applications, you can tell that the wording is just different and matching something that they would have put in as a prompt. I think where we're seeing more of an issue though is actually during the interview process, where we're not getting the genuine human anymore in a lot of candidates that are using AI for that matter, to the point where we have interviewers who are telling us that, hey, I interviewed this candidate and I could tell they were reading off of another screen. There was this slight hair pause on a recruiter call that I was doing with candidates, and you could tell they were trying to either hear something or look at something else before they answered my question. And then they didn't pause and they didn't say or like, and it was just a very formal response. So those are coming up, but the biggest one is in the interview process and reading off of another screen, and the interviewers, again, feeling like they're not talking anymore to a genuine human, which is who we essentially want to hire in the end. So that's been a big hurdle.
And I'm kind of smirking, smiling, because I've heard this story before from colleagues who work closely with folks who are trying to recruit co-op students. But really, it isn't a laughing matter, right? This is a serious issue. Organizations are under pressure to find good people, and interviews, cover letters, these are the classic tools that they use to screen people in or out. And if AI is muddying the waters, we've got a serious problem. So I'm really interested to hear more from you. What strategies are you and your team at MyoVision using to ensure, candidates that you're interviewing are not relying on AI generated answers? Or if they are, how are you teasing out the human contribution versus what AI is bringing into those moments?
Yeah, I think a big one is coming down to having interview structure and then in turn interview teams that are well trained on how to interview properly. And that's something we're going to focus on here in 2026 quite a lot, interview training. So what I've always liked from a structure perspective is what I call behavioral and non-behavioral questions. So, hey, candidate, tell me about a time when you did this or you did that. But then, and that's the behavioral question, right? And then the responses can be a bit more scripted often, but it's based on a previous project, something they worked on. Maybe it's tougher to put that into AI. But then the non-behavioral questions are where we feel we can truly pull out the genuine answers because now we're saying to them, hey, you've done this in your career, but now coming to my vision and understanding this situation that I'm outlining right now, how would you tackle this? It's really difficult during, 5 seconds of that conversation for a candidate to put all that information into Chat GPT or AI, have AI listen and come up with a really well-rounded response on how would you do something differently now at our company based on this situation I just described to you a few seconds ago. And so that's where you can get more genuine responses. Another strategy, quite frankly, I think a lot of companies are going to start taking is returning to in-person interviews,
Sure.
right? I remember going to the University of Waterloo for co-ops and sitting there all day and you're exhausted at the end of the day, but you talk to 10 people in person and you felt that genuine connection, which is hard to feel over a computer as well. So I could see companies starting to move back to that as well to combat the sort of AI challenges.
And there's a lot of information in those social cues, right? People showing up to the right room and on time, dressed appropriately. These are things that maybe you don't get in a virtual interview. Are you finding any, additional benefits to those in-person interviews these days?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's an energy, right? I mean, even as let's say someone's walking through your office space, they're showing create or curiosity when they're looking around. Well, why do you have this TV screen up showing stats here? What does this mean? And
Hmm.
we've noticed that with candidates we've brought in who are starting to ask questions about the office space and how does this work and who's sitting over here? And this is really cool. And that, I don't know, the genuine curiosity that way shows they're interested in your company and can
Hmm.
go a long way as well.
So I love that you're bringing up curiosity because I've heard from employers previously that that is actually something that they're trying to look for in the recruitment process. I'm curious whether it's something like I'm curious. I'm curious whether it's something like curiosity or problem-solving skills, the human skills. What are your tips for other employers for trying to identify those in a landscape that seems to be so complicated by AI?
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't know. I mean, I've always given the advice to candidates, employers, look for the difference makers. Look for somebody that does something different, whether it's been previously in their career, whether it's an idea they have, you know, I don't know, emphasize it before they even get into the interview. Find the difference makers, somebody that brings something completely different to your team, something unique. That's one technique that we've been trying to utilize and are going to utilize a lot more. I don't know if that answers the question, but um,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. And I could see how that combination of behavioral and non-behavioral questions might tease some of that out.
It does. And, another piece of advice I've given is don't apply with just a resume anymore. Apply with a portfolio. Apply with a PDF, a slideshow that you've put together that showcases who you are. Apply with a video, stand out, do something different. The problem with AI is it is so structured with the answers you give. It's very robotic, I call it. And we don't
Mhm.
want robots, right? We want bold thinkers. We talk about it at Myovision now. We want bold thinkers, outside the box thinkers, people to move the needle, take chances. And often the AI responses are so structured that you feel like it's almost boring. And so the emphasis is now on finding ways to pull that out of candidates, right? As an employer, okay, how is this person going to be the bold thinker we're looking for? And it all starts from the application and it funnels all the way through.
It's really great advice for our co-op job seekers. So we'll have to share that. Last question for you. How do you see AI shaping recruitment processes in the next few years? So like really thinking about that crystal ball, how can employers prepare for what's coming?
It's a tough, I mean, it's a tough question to answer because it's constantly shifting. Um, it's like it's tough. If I'm being honest, I think there's going to be so many tools almost in AI that will try to sift out who's used AI. Like I think that's part of the future, right? Is okay, here are these 50 resumes that I've received and who's used AI to generate all of this to the point where it's not that, I don't know, useful to what we're looking for, something like that. Um, I mean, look, there's going to be a lot of tools, I think, from an AI perspective that will help dive deeper into people profiles, right? Find me someone who's worked at a company that's, scaled from 2 employees to 500 in the last 4 years or has raised X amount of money. Like, I think that's where we're going to see more AI come into play. It's so unpredictable, though, to know how else it's going to be able to be used.
If nothing else, I think the rest of the audience will identify with that, and perhaps that response puts them at ease that, yeah, there is a lot of uncertainty, but we're all sorting this out together. So,
Yeah. And I want to emphasize, Dave, I think there's value to using AI too, right? And I think AI can be very helpful on the job and make you more efficient. And so I think there's an element of the difficulty for employers is okay, we want people who are very open and interested in using AI. We ask that in our interview process. How are you using AI? But we don't want you to use it to be a robot during the interview process and not showcase who you truly are. That's, I think, the whole point of it all.
that's really sage advice. Justin, thanks so much for your time today. I think our audience is going to get a lot out of this. So, it's
But
been a pleasure.
thanks, Dave.
Okay, thanks again to Justin for taking the time to share his insights. Boy, what a complicated scenario. We've got stories from our students talking about the wonderful ways in which they're leveraging AI for organizational success. Michelle is talking to us about intentionally building an ecosystem that, brings in talented people and then leverages their skills. But Justin is also reminding us that it's really difficult to parse out what is the human bringing to the table. So I'm just reminded of this theme of human at the center, human at the loop, and I feel like this is going to be the key issue for years to come. So we've got about 10 minutes left. I would now like to welcome back our speakers for a question and answer portion. We'll try our best to get through as many of the questions as possible. I see several in the chat already. And if we don't answer your question, we'll share the best way to contact each speaker at the end of the event so you can reach out to them directly. And for those of you, importantly, who are looking for the HRPA PD code, we'll share that number just before we wrap up in the chat in a few minutes. So please refer to the chat for that. Okay, let's look at the question and answers. The questions that the audience has posed. I'm hearing a couple things, including from Tina, who I know works at the University of Waterloo. Great question for the students. Do you have any sense of how your non-computer science peers are using AI in their co-op workplaces? Does any of the students, have a story to tell about whether this is just a STEM thing, or do we think that all the stuff we've talked about today applies in the social sciences as well? I'm really curious about that.
I can jump in and answer this.
Thanks, Sarah.
Actually, so throughout my period at the university, I've met a lot of other students from a range of different disciplines through extracurriculars I've done. And um, for example, I've had this one friend who does a lot of administrative work, who's currently in an administrative role. And she mentioned that she uses ChatGPT or like those large language models like that tool to help polish up her emails before she sends them, making sure that they're compliant with work policies. So she's mentioned that that saved a lot of time. And I've also had another friend who works more in the finance sector. And she's mentioned that AI has been really helpful for giving like base scripts for processing data. So that's something that she's not the most familiar with. So it's really great for her to be able to get a base template that she can work with and that is explained to her the different steps. Of course, she has to go and verify them, but having a little bit of a boost towards something that she's not as familiar with is something that she's found really helpful.
Okay, great example. And Michelle, I see you've come off mute too. Did you want to follow up with anything?
I was gonna say that as we mature through our process here at the Impact Lab, we are looking at other areas in which we want to bring in individual to start playing and testing some of our products that we're bringing out to ensure that they yield the desired output. So as Sarah said, finance is a big place where we would like to bring in some expertise so that the tools that we create will also be used to see how they can be used outside of just the STEM programs.
Okay. While I have you, Michelle, maybe I'd love to pose this question to you because one of the questions from the Q&A. Can and do co-op students help companies establish AI and AI processes, or must the company have some AI foundation? Where does the Impact Lab fall on that?
Well, what's great is that Sarah here was one of our students when we first started the Impact Lab, when the Impact Lab was not necessarily built and running and creating many tools at this point, looking at what the foundation, what the learning for our employees would be. So no, I think students, at least in our Impact Lab, have been key at all steps of the maturity that we're going through our process. So obviously, at the beginning, acts more on the development of the program and how we could do it and demonstrating use cases, and now more in the building. So the role of the student has changed, but the importance of them in our organization was from the beginning.
Okay, thanks for sharing. Noting the time, we have maybe just a minute left. So I'm wondering, Michelle, Sarah, Aditya, Aziz, do you have any final comments? Anything that you're absolutely compelled to share with the audience before we wrap up today?
Yeah, I can speak on that. So I think that with the advancement of AI, as we've touched upon in this conversation, there's a lot of positives and negatives towards the workforce. But I think it's really important that we embrace these new developments and changes while also being cautious of their pitfalls.
Great advice. Yeah, Aditya.
Yeah, so there's something I'd just like to leave to some new grads or just employers looking for new grads is just drilling down on what I've been mentioning before, which is just making sure that your fundamentals are completely solid and really identifying the use cases is very important. As we've seen, there's AI can hallucinate, there's issues with prompting, and just because innovating just for the sake of innovating isn't always the best solution. So once again, understanding your client's needs, understanding the needs of the company, and really understanding your own needs in terms of where you are with your learning is something I would like to leave. And once I got more familiar with that, I found that my efficiency skyrocketed.
Well, congratulations too, and thanks for sharing. Aziz, I can see you're nodding along a little bit. Anything you wanted to add to build on that point?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with Aditya completely. I think that integrating AI into our workflows is not something that we're going to be escaping anytime soon. So since it is something we're going to have to do, it's best to always think about, fallback mechanisms, how we can improve our prompts, how we can have the human in the loop, just to make sure that when the AI does hallucinate and make false predictions, how can we recover from that?
Well said, and a great reminder of today's essential theme, which is really how do we put the human at the center of all of this work. So great, great place for us to end. That's really all the time we have today. We hope you enjoyed the talk. Thank you so much to our speakers for sharing your insights and experiences. I've learned a lot of things to reflect on. Of course, thank you to the audience for spending some time with us today. Remember to stay connected with the Work Learn Institute on LinkedIn and with Co-op and Experiential Ed at Waterloo through our bi-monthly Insights for Impact newsletter. We really hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and we hope to talk to you again soon.